Welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Nightsaber Z42, and today we're doing a review of Blade Runner, the role-playing game, the core rulebook, of course. I've already done a review of the starter set, so if you want that review, feel free to look in a playlist somewhere to find it. So let's see what we have to work with here. This is the Blade Runner role-playing game, a neon noir wonderland that will take your breath away, one way or another. An evocative world of conflicts and contrasts that dares to ask the hard questions and investigate the powers of empathy, the poison of fear, and the burden of being human during inhumane times. An iconic and unforgiving playground of endless possibilities that picks you up, slaps you in the face, and tells you to wake up. Time to live, or time to die. The official Blade Runner role-playing game will propel players into the streets of Los Angeles as Blade Runners with unique specialties, personalities, and memories. The core game and its line of expansions will push the boundaries of investigative gameplay and tabletop role-playing games, giving players a range of tools to solve an array of cases far beyond retiring replicants. Beyond the core casework, the RPG will, both in setting and mechanics, showcase key themes of Blade Runner: action, corporate intrigue, existential character drama, and moral conflict that challenge player characters to question their friends, empathize with their enemies, and explore the perseverance of hope and humanity. Content warning. Yeah. So there we go. Blade Runner, the role-playing game in a nutshell, right then and there. So if you've read through any of the Alien role-playing books, you will definitely see some similarities right off the bat. The inside covers show a map of LA, although if you have the starter set, you actually do get a much bigger version of that map. And as I've said in my review of Alien, and I'll probably say it again like multiple times, just comparing those two different books, I suppose, there are some things that they continue to do very well in. For example, the table of contents. I really like how this is handled here. You have columns with chapters, art, and the contents underneath. It makes it very easy to find what you're looking for. So, like in most books, this game, or this book, I suppose, can be separated into 4 categories. Aside from the introduction chapter, we're just gonna start skipping the introduction chapter from now on. You have character creation, you have the how to play, you have the world lore, and then you have the equipment sections. And so I'll go ahead and lump the GM chapter into the how to play section of this review, since GM is technically playing. So let's get started with the character creation. First, allow me to open with just how fantastic the art is throughout this entire book. Martin Grip does a really awesome job just nailing the themes and just art in general. This and the Alien books are some of my favorite artworks just to look at. It's absolutely stunning and gorgeous. Character creation is fairly easy. There's not a whole lot of number crunching to be had, and the process is sequential. I really like how they lay all 15 steps for you at the very beginning, but it would have been nice to see if there was like a page reference number to coincide with. The table of contents doesn't really do that either. Regardless, all you have to really do is flip through to get to another step. So it does go sequentially by the numbers that they have here. So flipping the page, you're going to get to another aspect of character creation. So the 15 steps for character creation are choosing or rolling. There's a lot of choosing or rolling in this game. If you're going to be a human or replicant, you're going to choose a role for your Blade Runner's archetype or their class. Choose a role for your years on the Force. You're going to determine your attributes, calculate your health and resolve ratings, choose your skills, choose or roll for your starting specialties, choose a role for your key memory, choose a role for your key relationship, get your standard issue gear, choose or roll for your signature item, choose or roll for your appearance, choose or roll for your name, roll for your home and or describe it yourself, and then you're going to get out into the mean streets. As you've probably just heard, most of the different steps do cater to those who'd rather randomize the character creation process by having rollable tables. This is fine until you get to things that delve into backstory or character. When I did my character creation video and I rolled randomly for, I think it was the key memory, things just didn't really fit all together. The pieces just didn't really mesh well together in the puzzle. I still struggle to figure out where the mass killers fit into that. There are 7 different archetype or classes to choose from. You can alternatively choose to create your own class or have go classless. You just basically pick your key skill and attribute and go from there. So these 7 different archetypes are the analyst with the key attribute of intelligence and key skills of observation, medical aid, and tech. Then you have the city speaker, who have a key attribute of empathy and skills of mobility, connections, and insight. Then you have the doxy with a key attribute of agility, skills for hand-to-hand combat, mobility, and manipulation. This is actually one of the classes that's replicant only. Then you have the enforcer with a key attribute of strength and skills of hand-to-hand combat, stamina, and firearms. And you have the fixer, whose key attribute is empathy, skills in connections, manipulation, and insight. The inspector, whose key attribute is agility, with skills in firearms, observation, and connections. And last but not least, or actually last and least, you have the skimmer, whose key attribute is empathy, with skills in firearms, connections, and manipulation. Last, I'd like to touch upon specialties, because I really didn't do that in my character creation video because my guy was a rookie. He didn't really get any specialties. But specialties are kind of like feats. They give you extra actions that you can do to better help you and your team. So for example, you have let's say counselor. Once per shift, you can heal a point of stress from another character by talking to them for a few minutes. You cannot use this specialty on yourself because then you'd be crazy. Or something like killer. You can, if you want, roll an extra crit die when inflicting a critical hit on a target and choose the result you prefer. And then one of my favorites is origami. You can fold a mean origami figure. This takes a few minutes, and heals 1 point of stress, but can be done once per shift. So you have little things like that that can really help you out. Overall, I think that they really nailed characters in the Blade Runner universe. You have archetypes that fit well, although to me, I think it would be a struggle to narratively explain why an analyst or someone like a skimmer is out on the field. I like how your key memory is an important part of your character, as is the key relationship. If you think about it, Kay had both of those things. He had the memory of the wooden horse, and he had a relationship with Joy, the AI that he carried around. They've taken all those aspects from Blade Runner or the movies, and they fit them nicely into this game. So how does one play the game? Like with any standard RPGs, there's dice rolling, although the process for rolling skill checks is different than any other game I've seen, well, with the exception of Savage Worlds. And actually, that is a great comparative. Savage Worlds is, or rather Blade Runner is very much like Savage Worlds in how they handle skill ranks and things like that. So let's start with assembling the dice pool. When you need to make a skill check, you roll 2 dice. The first comes from your attribute, the second comes from your skill. And as we've seen in character creation, your attributes and skills have a rank from either D to A. So these ranks correlate to the die that you're going to be rolling. So either D6 all the way from level rank D all the way up to a D12 at rank A. So once you've assembled your dice pool, you're going to roll. And all you need for success is to roll a 6 or higher. As with a lot of the other Free League games, you can push your roll. So your initial skill roll reflects a safe and controlled action. If you fail your initial roll, or if you want additional successes, you can learn or you can lean into the action, giving it everything you've got, pushing yourself to the limit. Doing this, though, does come with risks. You can, depending on which attribute that skill is tied to, you can either take some extra damage or some stress from that roll, depending on if you roll some origami symbols or the little giraffe looking signs. Advantage and disadvantage are now staples in the role-playing game world now, I suppose. And it's something that's new in the Free League games here, or at least with the Year Zero engine. So you're either going to be rolling with one extra die of the lowest denomination, or with one less die of the lowest. You're going to take away the lowest. So what skills do we actually have to play around with? Each of the attributes has 3 different skills. So for strength, we have force, hand-to-hand combat, and stamina. For agility, we have mobility, stealth, and firearms. For intelligence, we have tech, medical aid, and observation. For empathy, we have connections, manipulation, and insight. And then we do have one that is not tied to any of the attributes, and that is driving, which is a maneuverability type skill. And really, the vehicle that you drive has a driving rating, if I'm not mistaken. Then there's combat. Combat works almost exactly as it does in Alien or with any of the Free League games, but with one major difference. You no longer have to hold actions in order to perform blocks or react. In fact, there is no block action this time around, and this ensures combat is quicker and often very lethal. So on your turn, you could perform one action and one movement. So this encompasses things like sprinting, crawling, any type of movement for your vehicles, and often a lot of the different moves that you can perform during a chase. And then you have your actual actions, so things that you do during combat like unarmed attack, melee attack, grapple. You can break free from a grapple, shoot your firearm, you can aim, you can throw a weapon, you can administer first aid, you can manipulate or use any item that's available to you. I really like the changes to close combat. Close combat is now an opposed roll, and whoever wins said roll deals damage to the other. When you really think about the changes to the Year Zero engine and how skill checks work, it really does ramp up play. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's a little bit more streamlined. You're not having to count a bunch of D6s and seeing which ones have which symbol and re-rolling the ones that don't. It's very fast paced, but it's also very lethal. The only thing I'm not really a big fan of is aiming, and I've never really been a big fan of aiming in these types of games. In order to aim, you actually have to spend a full turn performing the aim action, because aiming is an action, so that means you can't actually aim and shoot in the same turn. But let's say that you do get hit. Because the HP pool is so low for most characters, you can only ever take a few hits, so don't get hit. If you reach 0 HP, you are broken by damage, meaning you can only crawl. You also suffer a critical injury, and you have to roll on the appropriate tables depending on what kind of attack it was, so either crushing or piercing. These injuries are debilitating, and they take a while to heal up, meaning don't go into a fight expecting to walk away scot-free. Stress is another one of those staples of Free League games, where certain situations cause stress. Some push rolls can also cause stress, and if you're broken from stress, as in your resolve reaches 0, you have a critical effect. I really like that humans have different effects from replicants, so there's 2 separate tables for that. While not as debilitating as critical injuries, you still need to keep it in check. You can actually permanently lose max resolve, and if you permanently lose your last one, the last critical success effect becomes permanent. That means it's time to retire. Chases are a new feature in Blade Runner, and this is the concept that has me the most excited to play a game. A chase is its own aspect, as it should be. Each contestant has their own actions they can use depending on if they are chasing or running away. So some of your maneuvers during a chase include a pursuit or flee. You can hide, block, cut off, stand and shoot, or anything else that you can think of. The really neat aspect of chases this time around are the obstacles. If you have the starter set, you got these cards that have the obstacles. There's foot obstacles, vehicle obstacles, all sorts of different obstacles that you can randomly roll on. So for example, For a foot chase, you have a metro cab pulls in and blocks the way. This gives a disadvantage to pursue or flee and stand and shoot maneuvers, but an advantage to cut off. And let's take an example from one of the ground vehicle options. So D6 street kids jump onto the prey's vehicle, trying to pry things loose. The prey must roll connections, no action, to get them off. A failed roll means the maneuver for the round fails and the vehicle suffers 1 point of damage. If the connections roll succeeds, the kids will attack the pursuer instead. Or something from the aerial vehicle chase obstacle, lightning strikes the prey or the pursuer is hit, equal chance for each. The spinner loses all power and the driver must make a tech roll to reboot the spinner systems and prevent a crash. Even on a success, the maneuver chosen for the round fails. I really do like the changes implemented in Blade Runner concerning skill checks and combat. It's a lot more streamlined, and I often wonder if these same mechanics could work in other Free League games. It certainly won't work in Alien because the stress mechanic is heavily tied to it, but what about like games from like Tales from the Loop or Mutant Year Zero? I think that would be worth pursuing on some level. Speaking on the side of the GM, I personally find mysteries and investigative type scenarios to be very difficult to run, even with pre-written scenarios. The GM section does have a lot of tables for rolling random stuff, and there are stats for generic NPCs. Then there's the case generator. This would be an excellent start if you're looking to write your own cases. Choose or roll on each table to come out with a layout for the case, and then you're going to piece things together manually. I think this is actually quite useful considering there is no introductory adventure in the core rulebook. Would I ever use it? No. I'm of the type that would only ever run this game for the official cases. So something like this would only be useful if my players decide to go off the beaten path during said adventure and I need something quick to come up with. There are about 3 chapters about the world of Blade Runner, but I think the introduction chapter also does a pretty solid job of explaining some of the events leading up to 2037, where this game takes place. So there's this timeline at the very beginning of the book that really does a great job outlining, like where the major plot points happen and where we fall now. It doesn't ever go past 2037 because obviously this game takes place there. So you're not going to get any of the events from 2049 or anything like that. This is mainly the prequel to 2049, if anything. Not very much needs to be said here. The first of the lore chapters deals with the state of the world. Remember, this is very much like early cyberpunk, so themes and the dystopian setting are very similar. Basically, mega corporations run just about every aspect of life on Earth, and the really, really rich people have settled out into space. You do get details on LA, which has spread out to encompass remnants of other cities. You do have these cool maps, which are just kind of zoomed in versions of the actual maps that you get at the inside covers, and then you get a breakdown of what's in those different sectors. And each of the different sectors has a different theme. Like you're either going to be in the entertainment district or the place where LAPD is located and things like that. The second chapter deals with Wallace and its history and how the Nexus 9 replicants came to be. Very great chapter. In setting up things that happened in 2049, things that I never knew about, or on my first, or at least on my first watch through. I mean, as you watch that movie over and over again, you do get a little bit more out of it. And so it was just really interesting to actually go back and watch that movie after reading some of the material here. The third chapter is about the RDU and the different departments therein. Overall, if you're really interested in the world lore, specifically for Blade Runner, this does a good job at catching you up to speed. As I've said, for me, I've only ever watched the 2 movies. I've not read any of Philip K. Dick's works relating to Blade Runner, or played the game, or watched the anime spin-off on Netflix. So this was actually very much worth a read. And I will point out that out of all of the world lore chapters, the working the case chapter does have some mechanics to it that you're going to want to read through, specifically dealing with promotion and humanity points and things like that. It seems rather awkward to really look into the chapter on equipment for this review. As a Blade Runner for the RDU, you're going to always have everything you need. Money is abstract in this game, but it can be used for bribes and the like. Normally, I'm not a big fan of the abstraction of money. I think it's always better to, have money out there as a specific value that you keep track of. But in this game, they do it very well. You're always getting paid because you work for the RDU, so that's a given. So you're not likely to run out of money. So what you do instead is you basically make a connection roll if you want something, and you can spend Chinyan points to upgrade your rolls with advantage and things like that. If anything, the chapter on equipment better falls into the lore sections of this book. You get in-depth details on all the items, from your standard gear void conf machine to the baseline test. That doesn't mean the PCs can't acquire new armaments. You can actually put in a requisition order to secure such items for a time. Just remember, someone upstairs is going to know what you're up to. I think Free League does the best they can with this chapter. There's very little in terms of items for the PCs to use, but they do an excellent job with fluff and making sure that about every piece has like some sort of an artwork. I actually really do like this breakdown of the item with the telling you what it is. I think that's actually a really neat feature. It doesn't really work for all pieces of equipment in any book, but it does work here for Blade Runner. It's not going to have as many options as Alien, and I really wouldn't expect it to. Alien is a bigger franchise with more movies, novels, and comics to its names. But I am actually very impressed with what Free League was able to pull off with how little material there is for Blade Runner. Blade Runner, the role-playing game, does a very good job at creating atmosphere and giving you the tools as both a player and a GM to immerse yourself in the world of Blade Runner. When I write these reviews, I always ask myself if I would play this with friends, and the answer is actually both yes and no. First, and I think I made it a point of saying this when I did my review of Alien RPG, but to really enjoy this game, you're going to need one of two things, preferably both. You're going to need to enjoy mysteries or investigative role-playing, and you're going to need to really enjoy the world of Blade Runner. If you don't like both, or if you find yourself lacking in one of those areas, your enjoyment of this game is going to be greatly diminished. Could you take the mechanics of this game and apply it to others? Yes, I think you could. With work, of course. I mean, this is just a retooled version of the Year Zero engine, and there's been plenty of those, and they've reworked them and tweaked them a bit between each of their products. I think the improvements they made to this game are for the better, in my opinion, and I really do hope that they continue to integrate this into future games. Now, the real question comes down to, should you get the core rulebook, or should you get the starter set? And really, it comes down to, what are you wanting to get out of playing this game? Are you looking to create your own cases? If so, then you're going to want to get the rulebook. If you're looking to play official cases released by Free League, then you're going to want to go with the starter set. I mean, that's just how it goes. The core rulebook does have everything. The starter set also has everything that you need, with the exception of the world lore chapters, and some of the equipment I believe is also missing. But other than that, just starting out with the starter set is perfectly fine, especially because you're getting that case, which is supposed to be a trilogy, and that's the first one. So if you're really looking just to play the cases, every once in a while, maybe as a one-shot or something along those lines, then go with the starter set. That's going to do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and I will see you guys in the next video.